nonetheless, the primary thing here is let's get the fuel right, and then do some resistance exercise, get outside, get the sunlight, particularly if your shadow is longer than your height. That's a really simple thing. Paul Mason is a great speaker on that topic. And the simple rule is UVA light, which is the one which stimulates vitamin D production, also stimulates nitric oxide, is the one which is present when your shadow is longer than your height. Whereas if the sun's more up direct above, you're going to get more UVB light, which is the one which may be causing the damage. But there's an interesting theoretical pathway that a lot of that damage from UVB light may in fact be on the polyunsaturated seed oils that are in our tissue. And again, anecdotally, there are lots and lots of stories of people, including myself, that once you get rid of the seed oils out of your diet, you're less likely to burn. It takes you longer to burn. And I mean, I'm a bit plethoric now, but you should have seen me before. I used to be this bright red beetroot. So I'm naturally pale skinned, and I have actually been out in the sun today. But yeah, those people, and I burn far less now. And over the winter here in Tasmania, because the sunlight all winter, my shadow is longer than my height. I'm having far more exposure to UVA light now than I ever have, which we know has health benefits. So again, we've been over covering up. I'm not saying to people go out and stand in the sunlight all day, okay? But I think we've got to think about what's the good sunlight and what's the bad sunlight.
Let's talk more about the role of vitamin D generally in our metabolic health. What do we know? How does it synchronize with nitric oxide particularly and our immune system?
Okay, I can come back one step. Vitamin D, just by out of interest, is the primary molecule it starts being formed from is cholesterol. So we need cholesterol in our diet, and our body produces it. So part of that, under the then activation of sunlight, moves into vitamin D. Vitamin D and nitric oxide, I don't know a lot about, okay? But I do know about where vitamin D comes into the fructose metabolism. So when you metabolize fructose, and I talked about when fructose gets converted into small, dense LDLs. So the excess fructose gets converted into fat, which then gets bound up in protein, gets moved around the body as these lipoproteins, lipo-fat protein combination. Because fat in the blood can't dissolve, so it's got to be moved around somehow. So it gets combined with protein and then gets moved around. Those lipoproteins, particularly when they've gone through as much energy as they can, become small and dense. They tend to lodge in what's called the subintimal layer of the blood vessel. So you've got, that's underneath the glycocalyx. So we've got a blood vessel, it's got a lining of glycocalyx, then it's got a thing called the intima, of which the glycocalyx is part of it. Then you've got the subintimal layer, which has got connective tissue, and even that it has little blood vessels within it as well. And then you've got the muscular wall around an artery. I've simplified it probably too much, but nonetheless, those small, dense LDL particles tend to lodge in that subintimal layer, which is fine if you're just having fruit and you're having fructose and they sit in that layer. But what happens is those lipoproteins now are, rather than being filled with saturated fat, they're filled with polyunsaturated oils. So the polyunsaturated oil is inflammatory because poly means multiple bonds. So you've got saturated fat over here. Monounsaturated fat means it's got one double bond in it for flexibility. Polyunsaturated means multiple bonds, which gives it great flexibility. So the plants require oils that allow them to move in their own plant to be very flexible, because outside the temperature gets to zero. And so you don't want your oils in your tissue to freeze, because then the plant dies. So we as humans are sitting at close to 37 degrees, which allows the fat in our body to stay fluid, liquid, mobile, supple. But if you actually get fat, if you get saturated fat, like butter, for instance, there's a classic example, butter. If you put it in the refrigerator, it's solid. You put it outside at 37 degrees or 100 odd degrees, Fahrenheit, it melts. So therefore, you can imagine our bodies are made of butter, and we've actually literally got all that fat nice and mobile and supple in the body. Whereas and that works, but at 0 degrees, our bodies wouldn't work. So that's why anyway, the seed oil, the polyunsaturated seed oil, is the one that then gets into those small, dense lipoproteins. And that becomes oxidized, and that becomes highly inflammatory. So that then becomes LDL particles in our subintimal layer of the blood vessel. We know they're inflammatory, and the body has a method of getting rid of those called foam cells. Those foam cells are what's called macrophages, are the big guys that chomp up inflammation and then take it away. Those macrophages are under the direct effect of vitamin D. So if the body's got plenty of vitamin D, the body's got all these methods of getting rid of those small, dense LDLs. Now that makes sense in nature, because in nature, you will seasonally only be able to get your fruit, which is at the end of summer, autumn. So that your ability to then stuff your face and get fat for winter hibernation, yes, you will produce fructose. Yes, you will be producing these fatty particles, which are then traveling around the body. And the body is then at that time of year, because we're animals, exposed to quite a lot of vitamin D. So the body, we're meant to actually eat fruit in season, because our clearing mechanism is actually quite effective, which is under the influence of vitamin D. What it's not meant to do is we're not meant to be eating fruit specifically in winter, because we don't have the ability to get rid of the byproducts of that, because the vitamin D levels are down, because the sun's not out. And we're certainly not meant to eat fructose all year round, 365 days of the year. And we probably shouldn't be eating at night, because, again, as animals, we would have been foraging during the day for it. I mean, these are evolutionary concepts, but it's all there in the biochemistry. And okay, to coin the term, I am cherry picking that, but it suits the model, it suits the hypothesis. But I haven't actually heard a good counter argument to that biochemistry. So again, it comes back to fructose metabolism. It does come back to our vitamin D exposure. Vitamin D plays an enormous amount of a role in our immune system as well. So essentially, if we're eating I've written the dietary guidelines for the world in one sentence. And I realize I have I wrote a book called One Man's Answer for World Peace and Global Health. So I don't mind having a crack at it. But one sentence, here's the dietary guidelines, which we should all adopt. Eat fresh, local, seasonal, whole food based on your culture and environment, avoiding added sugar and processed food. That's it. That's the answer to improving our metabolic health. And that can be twisted around for your native environment. It can be twisted around and manipulated even by the food industry. But by definition there, I described a diet which is low in sugars and carbohydrate, because it's not, think fresh, local, seasonal. It's higher in healthy fats and complete proteins, because that comes from animals which are available all year round. And it avoids all the industrial seed oils. It's there. I've described LCHF in one sentence.
Dr. Fettke, you did mention about what a healthy diet can be. Eat seasonally, eat locally produced foods. So where does fasting come in? And avoid processed foods, obviously, and sugars, but where does fasting come into this? I personally, as a type 1 diabetic, I do fasting. I do intermittent fasting, which basically means 1 meal a day or 2 meals. I just don't crave any more food after that because I'm having a meat-based diet. It's very satiating. But I occasionally, maybe once a year or twice a year, I do extended fast of 3 to 4 or 5 days. 5 days is the longest I've done, for its healing properties on my gut, because I also suffered from IBS and due to my diabetes, uncontrolled blood sugars. And also it resets my insulin sensitivity. So suddenly my insulin needs reduced by 40 or 50% for good 3 months. And that's a big win for me. So this is why I do it, not because I don't enjoy eating food. So what are your thoughts on fasting?
Well, I'll just clarify when I say, when you said you eat meat, I actually we say I eat an animal-based diet. And so therefore, I do think that means considering the animal from nose to tail, and we need to eat the organ meats. And that's where the massive amount of nutrition, particularly in the liver. And I use a lion in the wild will kill an animal and it will eat the liver, the spleen, the brain, the fat, and then it might eat the meat. It tends to leave the meat for the hyena. So we've got to think about where is the nutrition in an animal-based diet. So it's not just about having meat. Where does fasting come in? Well, in our ancestry, our evolution is based on the fact that we did not have access to food all of the time, and our fasting state not only is definitely part of our ancestry, it's actually observed by religion. I actually wrote a thing about called the biochemistry of religion some years ago, where I came up with the fact that all religions observe fasting. All religions have noted, and which is nutritional ketosis, okay? Fasting moves you into ketosis. So all religions for thousands of years have observed the benefits of fasting, whether or not it's Ramadan in Islam or Lent in Christianity or intermittent fasting in Buddhism. But if you actually delve into them all, they all observe fasting. And it's a period of spiritual cleansing, spiritual well-being, and also of health benefits. As it turns out, we know that when you fast and your ketone levels go up, and this may be an argument for, maybe not being full-time keto, that maybe there's a benefit of going in and out of it. I don't know. We just don't know enough about that. Because clearly in our development, we did have periods of time of eating fruit, but it wasn't massive amounts of fruit because we were fighting with all the other animals, the possums and the bears and whatever, to get hold of the fruit as well. So I do think in our ancestry, we did come in and out of ketosis a little bit. We know that babies thrive in ketosis. The embryonic development is in ketosis, in a state of that. Brain development does far better on ketones. So we know that also there's autophagy and mitophagy. Autophagy is where the cells turn themselves over. So the damaged cells effectively just die, and all those products within them get recirculated back into the system as spare parts. And the mitochondria, when they do that, it's called mitophagy. And in the states of fasting, which is observed where you don't eat and our ketone levels go up, then we do have periods of autophagy and mitophagy. It's interesting, our T killer cells, which are the ones that mop up all sorts of things, including cancer, do better in a state of ketosis. Our neutrophils, which are the white blood cells involved in our immunity and infection responses, actually go up in fasting and don't come down under the effect of glucose. So those studies have actually been done in the 1960s, actually strangely enough done by the Adventists, but they haven't been repeated, where they showed that under the direct effect of glucose and carbohydrate, the white cell response went right down, which drives me insane as a surgeon, because when a patient wakes up after an anesthetic and they've been fasting, we've given them white sandwiches, orange juice, chocolate biscuits, ice cream, jelly. Whereas if those neutrophils, those white cells that we need in action, actually they're improving their activity for 72 hours. So I just can't imagine that I have all these patients that fast overnight before surgery, and then I say, look, the ideal thing is now you don't eat for the next 3 days. If you're looking at your immunity, but hospital food is doing everything it can to actually destroy that mechanism. But if you think about it, after surgery, most people don't want to eat. They might be nauseated, but they lose your appetite and you lose your sense of smell. And hospital food tastes bad because you've actually lost some of your taste. And I actually think, again, this is in our ancestry, God's way of putting our bodies into the best situation, into a state of ketosis, so it actually can heal itself. And those women with morning sickness
in pregnancy,
so not those women in morning sickness, but those women with morning sickness in pregnancy, the data is there on tens and thousands of women and their babies, that the more severe the morning sickness, the better the outcome for the babies. Healthier babies, more likely to go through to full term, healthier mums, less complication, less birth defects, and arguably smarter kids with less health problems.
So what's the mechanism there? Morning sickness, is that because of ketosis?
They're in ketosis.
Yes.
Yeah, this happened. I actually started studying this because our eldest daughter was pregnant, had severe morning sickness. And everyone's worried about it. The old wives' tale is, oh, don't worry about morning sickness, the baby will be fine. Well, in fact, it's been studied, but tens of thousands of cases have been studied to show that actually that's true. And that's the data associated with it. I've put that talk on YouTube, and orthopedic surgeons talking about morning sickness. Oh my goodness, what on earth is he on about now? But the data was there, and my daughter taught me that, because I thought I'll chase this. It's just fascinating. So ketosis, that state of ketosis, is really, really healthy for embryos and fetuses. And morning sickness is the worst in the first trimester of pregnancy. So I think this is the best. If you're ever going to test the state of ketosis, what you want to do is you want a captive audience. You want them on the most susceptible individuals, which are babies, particularly the first trimester. And if you really want to hammer them with ketosis, if ketosis and keto and all this stuff we're talking about is dangerous, let's do the experiment on embryos. I mean, you'd never get it past an ethics committee. However, it's already been done. Tens of thousands of results in the data there. The more severe the morning sickness, which means by definition, when you test it, the more severe, more significant the state of ketosis, the better the outcomes are for the babies. And we can take the opposite and look at gestational diabetes. Unfortunately, that's more third trimester, second and third trimester. But the more severe the morning sickness, the more unstable the blood glucose is, the more the complications, the more likely for not to get through to term, higher miscarriage rates, certainly higher, congenital abnormalities, and the ones that are more congenital, more environmental related, which are cardiovascular heart problems, not the genetic ones, but the cardiovascular environmental ones are much higher. And the more troubles with the babies, and more likely for those babies and those children to develop health complications, and particularly obesity and diabetes. So we've already got the data. Tens of thousands of women with morning sickness, tens of thousands of women studied with gestational diabetes. The data is absolutely conclusive. And again, I mean, everyone can do their literature searches. Everyone can get on PubMed and start looking at this stuff. You don't have to believe me. If you go to my talks, all the references that I've used are there. But so therefore, fasting is critical in our evolution because we've thrived on it. And if you want to do it, that's fine. Like Belinda, she intermittently fasts. I personally like eating. Okay. and maybe that's partly because I was a fat kid and I was constantly hungry, but I was constantly hungry because I had a bad diet. My mother was well-intentioned, but she was following the guidelines. So, I personally don't. I might intermittently fast, and I do skip meals. And we have in our house, we eat when we're hungry, we stop when we're full. And if one person wants to eat, the other one doesn't have to eat. And that works. But that works much better now that we don't have children. Okay. And I understand when you're raising children, there's more hunger and you want to get things organized and time-wise. So we have another thing which Karen's in, who's a dietitian from New Zealand. I quite like her quote here. We empty pantry, full fridge. Okay, so if you go into our pantry, it's okay, there's not much in there, but there's always stuff in the fridge. So that's so yes to fasting. Okay, I think it's got benefits. We know that from a development aspect it has benefits. We know from an autophagy and a mitophagy aspect it has benefits. And in that, that's a reduction of inflammation. It's a reduction in insulin, as you referred to. It's a reduction allows the body to actually get on and actually start healing. Those T killer lymphocytes, those T lymphocytes are under the direct effect also of alcohol. So they benefit from being in a state of ketosis. They don't like alcohol. So that alcohol can come from what you drink, or it can come from what you eat in fructose that gets converted to alcohol. So one of the things in COVID in the last few years, the most important cell, that the first line of defense against coronavirus, is a T lymphocyte. And so therefore, there were some studies, particularly more with the influenza virus early on, or for the last few years, showing that T lymphocytes and influenza did much better if you were in a state of ketosis, which sort of makes sense. But what drove me insane, or one of the things which drive me insane is in that state, in that COVID thing, is that we were encouraging people to eat badly, and we were encouraging our alcohol outlets were seen as essential services. So the one thing that we wanted our bodies to be in was a state of ketosis, if from an immunity, from a T cell. And we were telling people to go out or buy alcohol, sit at home, not exercise, eat badly, drink, not get their vitamin D exposure. And it was a perfect storm for a disaster. And guess what? It was. Yeah. Because again, we just failed on basic biochemistry. And so I don't have a lot of respect for public health officials on the basis that you had an opportunity to improve metabolic health and you did the exact opposite. And metabolic health was the primary, most important outcome that determined, the deaths and the deaths and the severity and hospitalizations and the whole works. It all came down to comorbidities, age and comorbidities. We had the opportunity to do something and educate, but guess what? Forgot to do it.
I fully agree with your sentiments, and I share your sentiments actually. So let's finish off, Dr. Fettke, with how you survived cancer. Now, I'm sure it's linked to, we know cancer feeds on glucose. We also know that fasting is beneficial for cancer patients. What did you do? What cancer was it, by the way? Tell us about your cancer story.
I've had a very aggressive cancer of my pituitary, which is smack in the middle, and I presented with eye troubles and headaches. And at that point in time, everyone said, the headaches are related to your stress. And I said, I don't get headaches. I give people headaches. And the beast hasn't changed. I'm very careful on this topic. I've got my story of where I have slowed up the growth of that by doing what I'm doing. So therefore, if there are the traditional modern treatments of cancer, which is surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy, and what I think we're missing in that adjunctive management is nutrition. As I alluded to before, the number one growth hormone that affects cancer growth is insulin. and then insulin growth factor 1, which is often related to our secreted in relationship to our protein intake. You can't, the cancers will tend to grow under the effect of glucose. That's the thing. The more severe, the more aggressive they become, the more likely they are to exhibit the thing called a Warburg effect, which is a Warburg effect. Again, it's in my talk on cancer on YouTube. But that Warburg, and my talks are very much to try and explain to the interested layperson what it's about in a description. I got into trouble with APRA for making things too simple. It was one of their complaints. So you're trying to simplify things. I said they are simple. Eat properly. This is the biochemistry. Here are the pictures. If you don't understand that, go away, because this is the basic thing. Anyway, so with cancer, the Warburg effect is the more severe the cancer, and all cancers tend to drift down the Warburg effect, which makes you think that cancer is primarily a metabolic problem and not a genetic problem, not a chromosomal problem. Mm. It also makes you think that it's a primary metabolic problem at the mitochondria, which are the engines of the cell. Because how come all cancers, the more severe they become, all start exhibiting the same basic biochemistry? You'd think that if cancers were as bizarre as they would be, the more severe, the more aggressive, the more mitoses, the more abnormalities you'd have in it, you'd think the more bizarre and deranged the metabolism would become. But it's the exact opposite. The more they can be bizarre, the more they come back to a root primary metabolism. And so the metabolism of the cancer itself is the Warburg effect. The metabolism of the growth of the cancer is called the reverse Warburg effect. And if you think that sounds confusing, it is. But I pieced that together with pictures and explained that. Again, the long and short of it is it's under the direct effect of glucose. You can't starve a cancer of glucose by not eating it, because the body will constantly produce a small amount via that gluconeogenesis for those small number of cells that need it. So you can't starve it of glucose per se. You can starve it of glucose spikes. You can starve it of insulin by moving yourself into a low insulin environment, which means the body produces insulin related to the carbohydrate you take in. If you don't take carbohydrate in, and there's no biochemical requirement for it, then you will not produce nearly as much insulin. You'll produce a little bit with protein. You'll produce a little bit with insulin growth factor 1 with protein intake. But you can starve it of all those spikes. You can move yourself into a state of ketosis, which we know is better for T killer cells, and which are the ones that go around and mop up the cancer. We know that if you have surgery, being in a state of ketosis, as we alluded to before, is beneficial to your healing. We know that if you have a low carbohydrate intake, your glycocalyx is going to be in better nick and the vessels are going to be working better. We know that if you have chemotherapy and radiotherapy, that inhibits the reverse Warburg effect, and it tends to protect the good cells around a cancer, and it makes it an unhappy environment for the cancer itself and where the growth's occurring. So I'm not for 1 second saying that if you do low carb keto carnivore that you're going to be cured of cancer, but you're going to move things in the better direction, which means that your surgery is going to be more successful, your radiotherapy is going to be more effective, your chemotherapy is going to be more effective, and your mental outlook will be better because you've taken control of something. And we've got studies that look at the positive attitude on people. Those people who have a positive attitude tend to live longer than those people with the same cancer who have a negative outlook. So there's nothing harmful. It's not about creating false hope. It's about creating something that you can do. I've got a mate at the moment who's actually riddled, and he probably won't mind me saying it, but I'll catch up with him tomorrow anyway. I ring him each day. And he rang me and said, what do I do? And I said, we talked about this. And so he'd gone hardcore keto. got his ketone levels up. He's had his radiotherapy. He's had his surgery. Sorry, he's had surgery and he's had chemo. Completely wiped him out with chemo, but he's just been staged again. And the oncologists have said, wow, we've never seen this much effect this quickly from his one dose of chemotherapy. So he's gone harder, they've gone hard at him. And I'm not saying that he's going to be cured, but if we can give him a bit longer, or and if you look at, I looked at quite a few books that talk about miracle cures of cancer. They're out there, the miracle cure. They all talk about a reduction of sugar and processed food. I've just been silly enough to start talking about the biochemistry of how that might be occurring. So no guarantees whatsoever that diet will cure cancer and that supplements will cure it at all. I just don't think we can say that. But there's no guarantee that chemotherapy will cure cancer, or radiotherapy, or surgery. We talk about long-term remission rates. But why are we ignoring this huge elephant in the room called nutrition? And another thing which drives me crazy, and I don't think I'm completely crazy, is we've got all these cancer morning teas and these fundraisers which are all about cakes and selling lollies, and you just go, do you not understand that what you're actually recommending and giving? I just saw a function the other day where they were selling cakes at a breast cancer day. I'm going, can we just not see the stupidity of this? And we're doing something with the Cancer Council at the moment on this at the moment. Literally having to go to them and say, would you stop doing this stupid stuff? And they don't like hearing that, but here's we're talking about the biochemistry. Here's the science. Stop doing stuff which has been doing historically based on vested interests advising you. And one of the hardest things in medicine, in life, for all of us, but particularly as the health professionals, is to say, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I'm sorry, we got that wrong. But when you do that, you empower yourself to completely go off on a different path. And the same thing as you as an individual, whether or not you're vegetarian or you've been eating badly, like we've apologized to our children for the way we raised them. Sorry, guys. Well-intentioned. We're not bad people. We tried that. Oops, sorry. In retrospect, we didn't give you the best diets. But here, this is what we think now. And maybe we'll change in another 10 years. But I can tell you, each year, it's going in one direction. And most of the people lecturing in this space are moving towards carnivore. The low carbers have moved to low carb healthy fat, moved to keto. Most of the people lecturing in that space, and I know most. We're omnivorous in this house. Okay, we do have vegetables. But when Belinda's away, I'm carnivore because I'm lazy. It's easy. I'm just got my meatballs and my eggs and cheese, and off I go. And people say I'm boring. I say, okay, well, no, I just put more spices and change it up. But when Belinda's around, she cooks more vegetables, but they're all low carb. So.
Dr. Fettke, that was an amazing, incredibly informative discussion. Thank you so much for your time. And I wish you a good night. It's nighttime there in where you are at the moment.
Well, there's no night time at the moment because the World Cup of Soccer is on. So, okay, there's matches going all the time to fit in with someone's time zone.
That was perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much. And hopefully we can chat again. I can bring you and Belinda together and we can have another lengthy discussion sometime in the future. Thank you again.
All right. You have a good day. All right. Bye-bye, Nayiri.